question two of the art history file. I'm doing part one, two, which is about which, and I'm picking the points about art inspired by other artists and comedies. This is the Luncheon in the Grass by Manet. Of course, this painting is a reference to multiple other paintings made by famous artists. We have prints by Raphael, which is this part. We have general scene and composition of Titian in this painting as a whole, and we also have this is very similar to the Tempest, which is a very famous Venetian artwork. In general, Manet used this as a commentary on the French Academy and how the French Academy was more or less just picking what and what not to include based on what they wanted. This painting is very interesting because it is essentially every kind of accepted piece of art at the time. There's still life. There is there's portraits. This is a genre scene because these aren't real people in the same way. It's a genre scene. It's not of the rich, and it's landscape. It's very similar to a fete gallant of the Rococo era, in my opinion. And yeah, and he uses these references to make commentary on how when other artists do it, it's okay, but when the realists do it, it's not. Or the post impressionists. Sorry. This is the Daughters of the Boit of Boit by a American artist. This is a clear reference to Las Meninas. We see a large object which is partially off frame, and we also see the use of lighting. There, just like in Las Meninas, there's one open window, and there's this like door in the background that's releasing some light. But in general, this Las Meninas and the Boit daughters play with the concept of light, and they also play with having characters not in a portrait way. In just like Las Meninas, this looks more like a actual scene going on instead of a portrait, right? There's one girl who looks like she's paying attention, two of them, but the other two, but the person in the front, the very similar to the Infanta, is younger and she's not really paying attention. And then of course there's one girl looking off. This is important because this is an American doing this, and it's trying. And I think part of this is to show that Americans, just like anyone else, can understand and have studied art. So just like all the other Europeans, American art is not different than the European art because look, I this is basically an American Las Vegas. I think that's a fair way of putting this painting. This is the Burial of Count Orgaz by El Greco, and just like the Titian's work, Assumption of Mary, it's split into sections. We see Earth, Heaven, and God. And here we see Earth, Heaven, and God. The general context for why El Greco did this was El Greco was one of Spain's first artists, and he was not from Spain. He's Greek, obviously, and he trained in Venice, and he brought the Disegno of Venice to Spain. This is a, and in general, and because Spain just didn't have this kind of artistry, he used these references to build a Spanish lineage of art. And I think that this is a very important work of Spanish art. It shows also the difference in Spanish mysticism to the more Italian kind of Christianity. This is I think the darker colors and the is it, well, one was a different scene. It's a funeral, right? And it's showing it, but generally how in this is a actual man dying and being worshipped like an angel. Well, this is a saint being an angel, which is being worshipped by God, which is a very different kind of scene. And it does show a difference in Italian Catholicism and Spanish Catholicism, and how art can bind those ideas together. I also picked the things about comedy. This is The Peasant Wedding by Bruegel the Elder. And I'm also going to lock this in with The Beaneater by Karachi. Both of these paintings are humorous due to their mocking of the poor. In this painting, we're seeing a peasant wedding. We're seeing them use a door. It's a wedding happening in a barn. They're using a door to serve the food, and they're not getting good food. They're getting like porridge, right? She's wearing a little faux paper crown, which, but this is made for the middle class, the middle class and the wealthy, represented through these people here, and their judgment of this sexual scene. Originally there was going to be a people making out here. This is trying to show the debauchery and the poverty of the peasants and why the nobles and clergymen and the middle class are better than them. And the peasants have to eat porridge off a door, well, and have their wedding in a barn and have a paper crown. Very similar to the Beaneater by Karachi. This is a scene really mocking this idea of what peasants eat. You know, Noblemen and people in the middle class could actually eat meat. They could afford food, but instead he's eating beans, onions. I forgot what this was, and more onions. This is like onion and bean food, and he's eating watered down cheap wine, right? And bread. Oh, and there's bread. All these things are incredibly cheap to make, you know. And also specifically, both of these styles. Part of them is to not just show how the peasants are bad, but show they're uncivilized. Karachi is doing this even in the paintwork itself. Karachi is painting it intentionally to be a more spotty style. Not, but he didn't always do this. He did this specifically to show the fact that this was a scene not worth being taken seriously. Just like that as well, he's taken in a uncompromising pose, not a beautiful pose, but instead mid bite. That's not a good scene. Similar to this, there's people mid eating. There's people just doing. And this was not like a common thing. If you were gonna draw people actually existing, you would draw them like this. You would draw them in a nice position. But they intentionally drew people like this to show the fact that, oh, these people are stupid. There is a very similar kind of painting. This is Satire of the Tulip. Satire of the Tulips. I forgot the word. I'm sorry. Tulipmania. Tulipmania. Yeah. And the big reason why, and this is a satire by Bruegel the Younger, and or the Elder. It's the Elder. It's the Elder. Is it the Younger? I forgot. I'm sorry. But in general, the point of this work was to show differently the silliness of the middle class and the nobility. We see he has a sword. Everyone with a sword here is nobility, and these people are the middle class trying to sell the nobility these tulips. Tulip mania went insane in the Netherlands. They were selling tulips for more than 10 cows, and they use monkeys, and the use of monkeys is to show their foolishness. But specifically, not of the peasants, but instead the middle class and the nobles, which is a very different kind of scene. Both are mocking social classes, but this is a very early example of a satire not of people who are foolish instead of foolish instead of poor, right? And of course this continues with like the paintings of the dysfunctional nobles. But this is one of the very first examples, at least we saw, of something like this. And this is Netherlandish Proverbs. Unlike all the other examples we see, this is a joke because it's a joke, right? Unlike in all these other ones, this was a part commentary, part part com part commentary, part art history. Especially this one, there is some physical comedy of the monkeys, but these two are entirely social commentary about how bad poor people are. Really, this is comedy for the sake of comedy. These are proverbs. They're sayings. Tiling the roof with tarts. I don't know a lot of these. Here's the blue. Covering the tile with tarts means you're rich. This one would be cucking your husband, having cheating on your husband essentially, and covering it up. In general, this is the kind of the comedy in this scene is the fact that there's all these people doing things you can recognize, and I think it's funny for a very different reason. This is comedy for the sake of comedy, and that is and it's made by the same person that I think made this one, Brutally Elder, and it's very interesting because this is a comedy piece for comedy's sakes, and this is mainly due to the fact of the rising middle class. And sure, the middle class really enjoyed laughing at peasants, but when they weren't, they really enjoyed laughing in general. This is a very common thing people did forever, and I think this is a very early sign that shows how people didn't just make art to make art. They made art to enjoy themselves. This is very similar to paintings like the Apotheosis of Homer. Oh no, of the philosophers, right? This is very similar to people want to ponder art. They used art like television. They used art to entertain themselves for a long period of time, and you could do this really easily. Oh man, what's this guy doing? Oh, why is he doing this? Oh, that is why. And it's funny for a very different reason than really any other painting we've seen.